Okay, in this video I'm going to show you how to get a good retro feel to those games you play in RetroPie when you put them on your modern TV, like LCD, flat screen TV, high definition. And as you've probably seen, quite often when you do that with most of these emulators, the result is pretty distorted, blown up, pixelated, just generally harsh, and nothing like the CRT experience that you remember when you played it the first time round. And there are different ways to get this working on RetroPie and with modern TVs. There's different techniques, there's different implementations of doing the same thing effectively to get a softer feel, something that looks more retro, like it was out of the 80s. But at the same time, whilst some of these approaches will make it look a lot better, there's not necessarily a correct way of doing this. So there's not a guide. I can't put a guide up to say do this and it will be correct. There's not going to be that sort of guide. There's different ways of doing this, like I've said, and some people will prefer one way, some people will prefer another way. So it's really a case of try out a few different options, see what looks best for you, and whatever is the best result on your screen, I'd stick with that. For example, in North America, quite a lot of old TVs in the 80s and 90s, I think, use component input, or even composite in some cases. Whereas in Europe, to start with, it was really common to use like a composite feed with an RF cable in TVs, and the result looked pretty horrific on the CRT TVs, but it's what everyone was used to, and was the norm. And then after that, in Europe, RGB through SCART was really popular. In the 90s, you started getting TVs with that input all over the place, and it was much better picture, but really different to what was before. And that neither of those were right, it was just what's at the time. So again, check out these options, see what you like the look of, and stick with it. It might be that you're perfectly happy running it with no changes at all, and you just run the game and you're happy with that, and that's fine too. So really, check out these different options. I'll put at the end the videos looking at the different ways of doing it, and you can compare and contrast, see what you like the look of. Now, to implement this, in previous videos I've shown shaders, and I'll show you shaders here as well, briefly, but the main point of this video is to look at overlays. So this one, and I think the overlays has a really good effect. Looks quite, it does do the trick pretty well. So that's the main focus of this, but the other option, obviously a key other option is shaders. So we just run through those. It's quick and easy to do, or comparatively quick and easy to do. There's only about 3 steps to implement, and I'll put the details in a post. And this is all based on an original post on the Pet Rock Block forums, which I'll reference as well, and you can see the science behind it, if you like. And that's a whole other discussion, but we won't really go into that. We'll just say how we can implement it. So log into your Pi, username Pi, password Raspberry, and you'll get this screen here. I thought what we're going to do is change into a directory where the configurations are set. So cd apt /retropie /configs. Like that. Now, if you're interested in the configuration setup, there's a very long, boring video I've done on the whole path configuration. Look that one up on YouTube, and you can see what's what there. So at the moment I'm just going to go through and set these settings, but if you want to know more detail, check that other video. Okay, so in configs, I'm going to do this example on the SNES, Super Nintendo, but the principle is really similar for all of the systems. And as luck would have it, the Super Nintendo version will be the same as the Mega Drive / Genesis system as well, so I can show both of those in one hit, but the others will have slight tweaks, and I'll try to show you where that would be as I go along. So in the configs directory, what we'll do first is go into the all directory, and you only have to do this once per system, and we're just going to make a small change in this all directory. So in here, you can see here I've got videomates.cfg. Now that file's created when in Emulation Station you start a game and you get a couple of seconds to press X, and it brings up a menu to choose particular video modes that you want to play in. Maybe set it 1080p or 720p, or slight changes in there, and it's stored in the video mode section. Now in the video mode section we need to make a small edit, which we're going to do now. If you don't have the file videomodes.cfg, then you can just create it. and to create and edit it is the same process. So regardless if it's there or not, just type this command. So we'll do sudo nano, which is the text editor, videomodes.cfg. Like I say, if you don't have the file videomodes.cfg, type it anyway, just like that. And if you don't have it, this file will be empty. If you do, there'll be something in it. Now, I've already made a couple of changes here. Before, the first time I opened it, I had these first 4 options only, and that's only because I added them in myself. You don't need these. But what I'm going to do here for the examples is change the way that 2 emulators output the resolution. So basically, in summary, all I'm doing here is saying this emulator, LR, which is libretro, hyphen Snes 9x, hyphen next. That's the end of the emulator name there. Can I double click on that one? No. Okay, so yeah, that's the emulator name. Then I'm going to pass the parameter underscore render, and I'm going to set that to config. And config just means when it renders the resolution on your screen, put that, read the resolution from your config file, as opposed to using a predefined resolution or particular aspect ratio. So rather than use one sort of stored in the system, like, right, I want 4:3 on this, or 1:1, or the native aspect ratio, whatever, it's just saying in this example, do whatever we're saying in the config file that we'll look at in a minute. So that's all that does. And you need to do this for each emulator that you want to use. Now, the SNES, I think, by default has... oh, by the way, important point, this is only relevant for emulators that are running through libretro cores or Retroarch, because that's the configuration files that we're going to be changing. Other emulators can apply graphical effects to emulate a CRT experience, but that's going to be a whole different set of settings. So this covers Retroarch. Yeah, so we've got that one there, and I've also got Beaker Drive, which drives the Mega Drive emulation. So I've said there as well, that's set to config. So you need to add those 2 lines in. I'll put this in the forum post. And as I was saying, the SNES has got about 4 emulators that are set up by default in RetroPie. So you might need to list all 4 if you swap between them. But I only use, or at least at the moment, I just use this emulator, so that's why the name is there. Okay. Also, these settings are specific to 1080p TVs. If you don't have a 1080p TV, you do need to make some changes. I'll try to sort of outline that and reference it in the forum post, because various things might need to change. But I think the majority of people would have a 1080p TV, so this should work out. Okay, so when you've got those 2 lines in, and that's assuming you want to use SNES 9x Next as your emulator, it's the default, so it should be fine. And this is also based on RetroPie 3 Beta 2, so it'll help if you have that. Okay, there are ways of doing this. That was Control X to X out. There are ways of doing this with different versions of RetroPie, but the current one's 3 Beta 2, so I'd run with that. Okay, change back a directory, and now we're going to set this up for the SNES. Change into SNES, I'll list that directory. Now you can completely ignore the RetroArch overlay file, the RetroArch shader file, and the RetroArch standard file. They're purely there so I can flip between different options quickly. The only ones you need to care about, well, the only one you need to care about is this one, Retroarch Dot Cfg. Okay, so if we edit the Retroarch Dot Cfg file, and the first thing I'm going to do, just quickly, is copy back. You don't type this. This is purely me setting it up to behave as it should do. So don't type that line I just did there, that's CPU1, ignore that. Okay, so now we're going to edit the RetroArch file here, and do that with sudo nano retroarch, and this is the file that you should have in place on the system as it stands. So it's already almost prepped to use a shader. It's got a video shader for the Snes in place here, although it's set to be false. So all I'd have to do is set that to true, and you'd get a shader kicking in. And I think in the video that I'll show after, I've put the shader I'm using is called SNES .gl SLP. I haven't used the Snes Phosphor one. So it's slightly different there, but then, like I say, the shader demo is using this setting that says true in it, and I've used Snes GLSLP. But that's like I say, not the purpose of the video. We're looking at overlays. So what we're going to do is delete these lines down here. Video smooth equals false can go, video shader equals enable can go, and the video shader path can go. We're going to keep all the rest, and then we're going to scroll up, and it's quite important to put these at the top just to make sure that everything flows correctly. The path configuration video I did will explain quite why, but basically just put it at the top. And what we're going to put in here is the settings to customize the output using overlays, and I'll paste these into a forum post when you can just simply paste like this with the right mouse button. There we go, it's just put those in. So we'll run down and explain them. They're pretty straightforward, most of them. So the first option is to say shader enable false. We just sort of, you could, I think the default's false, so you could leave that out, but it just clarifies for this system, for the Snes, you don't want to use shaders, or not in this example. Okay, and I've copied the comments of the user who's put these settings up on the RetroPie forums, so they're his comments down here as well. So we don't need the shaders. Next one. Now, like I said earlier, this is for 1080p TVs, and that's why the X resolution for video is a 1080p resolution 1920. That's the horizontal monitor, and then the vertical is 1080. So that is 1080p spec. If you had 720p, you could change those, but then there are quite a few other subtle changes you need to make. So it's not just that simple. Okay, so that's what you put in for a 1080p TV. Then you've got a custom viewport width. This is effectively this is where a moment ago we said the Snes setting in the video modes file should say config, and this is the config that it's reading. So we're saying that the custom viewport, the output of the game should be 1194 pixels horizontal and 896 tall, and that's basically a multiplier of the native resolution that will still fit on 1080p appropriately, and it's a calculation that we can explain sort of further in the forums, and you'll see a lot more detail about that, but we don't need to go into too much detail there. That's the value that you want to use. Okay, so 1194 and 896. Then the next setting, the custom viewport X and the custom viewport Y, basically defines the top left position of where the image should start. So it's just placing the image on the screen correctly. Again, it's set for 1080p TV, so you need that TV in those settings. Aspect ratio is 22. That means the aspect ratio, as opposed to forcing a 4:3 or whatever other ratio, 22 is custom. So it's just essentially saying the aspect ratio is whatever I've decided to put up here. So you just put 22. Okay, input overlay. This will relate to an image file. You can see at the end here it's got a CFG extension, and it's a text file that it's reading, and in the text file it states where the image is, and we'll cover copying those configuration files over in a minute. That'd be step 3, but this file is specific to the well, you can see in the file name SNES and Mega Drive. For the other systems, it's the same process, just it'll have a different configuration file here, and the resolution will be slightly different. That's essentially the differences. But details will be in the forum post. The video really is just geared for show you how to get this up and running. So paste these values in. This is just saying use the overlay image, or the overlay, which is specified here. The opacity, whether it's translucent, I guess, and the scale of it, and video smooth. Now this setting is something that you might want to try with true on and with false on. With true on, as it describes, it's going to give a slightly smoother, blurrier, not blurred, but softer effect to the image, whereas with it false, it's quite harsh and crisp, but you might prefer that. Again, like I said at the start of the video, it's all down to personal preference, so try it with true on and try it with false on. I prefer true, but it's down to you. And then we've just got, the user's got the comment here, smooth the emulated image, not the overlay. Here is back the original 3 lines, which you just leave in. Okay, so when that's pasted in, quit out of this with Control X. Hit say, do you want to save? Say yes. And just confirms the file name, press enter. That's it. So that's step 2. And the last step is checking out those overlay configuration files. And they can be found in, if I go back a directory, and back a directory again. So now I'm in APT RetroPie, change directory to emulators, and then change directory to Retroarch. In the Retroarch folder, we've got a directory called overlays. So I'm going to change into that one. And here, I've created, now you're probably pretty familiar with FTP clients for getting ROMs across to RetroPie, and this is the same process I used here. I use the FTP client to go to this directory and copy it across this folder 16-9, and I'll put a link to it in the forum. It's a zip file, you just extract it, get the 16-9 folder, copy it there. And if I didn't want to do it like that, let's try it again. Wow, same effect. But okay, so you can see here in white you've got the configuration files, and the pink is the image. So different systems got different images. This guide is just going to focus on this one here, and that is the file that we referenced earlier. That's what it's going to read. I'll open it up and you can see what's in it. It's not an awful lot of text at all. Okay. There, so it's saying overlay. We're going to have one overlay, and the image is there, which is in the same directory. Full screen, and I'm not sure what overlays are. Is that a description? I don't know. Either way, set it to that. I'm sure it's fine. Quit out of that, and that's the last step really. I mean, I haven't shown you copying the files to this directory, but just get your FTP client, or however you copy your files across. It's probably best to use some sort of FTP client like FileZilla for Windows, and copy it to in overlays to 16-9 directory, and you'll be away. And that, in terms of setting it up, is it. So it's pretty quick and easy. Obviously it'll take you longer if you're going to do that for each system, because not only do you need to go into each system to change the Retroarch files that we saw earlier, but also you're going to have to change slightly different settings. And those are available as well actually on the forum. The user, I think it's Pat L on RetroPie forums, has put his own configuration files, so you could look at those to get the right settings. Yeah, okay. Just go back to that directory we're in, cd ... and in the configs again. So we did this in the Snes directory, and the Retroarch should be, as we edited it earlier, as I said, ignore these files here, you don't need them at all, it's just that one that we care about. And that should be it. I'll fire up some videos showing what the video game will look like with no changes at all, completely stock from RetroPie. Then I'll show what it looks like with a shader, and obviously different shaders are going to look different, so you could experiment with different shaders to get a slightly different effect. There's a separate video about how to configure shaders, and we also covered it very briefly earlier. You just set it to true and you've done it. And then the third option will be what we've done here, the overlays. And we'll just quickly have a last look at that file. The overlays, in essence, really it's saying here, use an overlay, which is an image put on top of the screen, and then you're able within that overlay to put certain graphics, certain say scanlines or a graphical effect to affect the picture, and it's quite effective. I quite like it. And I'll put on the notes on the actual video just at what point I'm using which method, so you can see when the overlays are kicking in. But I think you should find that pretty effective, and that's all you have to do for the settings. If you need more details, ask in the forums or comment on the video, and hopefully you'll have a much more accurate picture when you're looking at playing the retro games. Thanks.
Round one, fight! Go that fire! Go that flame! Hadouken! Round one, fight! Hadouken! Hadouken! Round one, fight! Go that flame! Go that fire! Go that fire! Go that flame! Round two, fight! Go that fire! Round three, fight!
Okay, just a quick note at the end here. I've had a quick look through the video capture earlier, and on some of these, I don't know how it's going to quite show on YouTube, but on some of the ones where we've got the overlay, like is on the screen now, the sort of faux scan lines, some of them look quite clear. You can almost see one of them's quite consistent sometimes across the screen. On the TV, that's not noticeable at all. Can't see that whatsoever. But on the monitor, on the playback, you might notice on when I do the overlays with this sort of TV view on the screen, which is the purpose of this video, to get the overlays displaying. Sometimes the sort of imitated scan lines, there's a couple of them that look really prominent, but like I say, on the TV, can't see that at all whatsoever. So really, I'm hoping that the video throughout this, showing the examples of the games, shows you that the overlays and the effects you can put on an overlay image can be really effective and look, you know, a lot better than certainly the default. And I think really it's better than the shaders. So you can configure these for most of the systems. Details will be in the forum. And let me know if you've got any questions. Thanks.